Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hey there, welcome back. It is your friend Cesar Espino, You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Jamie Blackburn. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
I'm good, Cesar. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
It's doing well. Thank you so much. So before we get started, let me give our listeners and viewers a little bit of your background so they can get to know you. Jamie has worn many hats in her life, from oyster shucker, science teacher, outdoor educator, a school counselor, and ice cream scooper. But the job that she loves the most is what she does now, helping people feel less stressed and anxiety through her wellness business, the Inner Map Project. She believes it is her soul's purpose to bring people together, communities, and support women that share their unique talents with each other so that everyone can grow and have the courage to share their gifts with the world. Nice. So I want to know more about that. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us more about you, like your background? Where do you come from? And give us more of that background, you know?
Awesome. So I started out my career as a science teacher. I knew I wanted a job, or at least I thought I knew I wanted a job that I was always going to have a constant salary. So I was looking at nursing and education. And if you look now, it's like, I'm kind of glad I didn't go into nursing right now because God bless all the nurses that are out there working right now.
Right.
But so I started out as a science teacher, and then I started having kids coming to me and talking to me about stuff that I didn't really know how to deal with. They were telling me things like that they were pregnant and they hadn't told their parents yet, or, they had parents who were alcoholics and just needed somebody to talk to. And so I decided to go back and get a degree in school counseling just so I would have some more ability to help my students when they came to me with that kind of information. And I ended up loving counseling. I liked working with kids one-on-one. And so I started school counseling, and I was a counselor for about 5 years after being a science teacher for about 8, I think. And then throughout the whole time I was teaching yoga, and I started bringing a lot of my yoga into my work with students to help them just relieve stress and anxiety. I mean, the anxiety is on the rise right now with teenagers, definitely. And I think just everybody, especially with what's going on in the world right now, I think we're all feeling a little anxious. So, so I started bringing in some of the yoga with that, and decided about I decided probably 2 years ago that I wanted to venture out and try something new. And we were in a position where, fortunately, like, we can survive on my husband's salary. So I was able to go out and take a risk and start my own business, and have been doing that for about a year now. So I work with people, but work a lot now. I thought I was going to be working more with teens, and then I ended up working with a lot of women who, moms who have either dealt with anxiety throughout their life or just needed some support dealing with managing a household and having a full-time job, and the mom guilt that can go along with, taking care of yourself and just figuring out how to balance everything that comes up with that. So it's really fun. I love what I do. And
that's awesome. So let me ask you, like, was there anything in particular in your past before that said, you know what, because it seems like you were in the educational system for quite some time. So what drove you to going to take that route versus anything else in any other industry, right? Like, was there something in particular said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do? Obviously, you're not doing that anymore, or you left that, but I'm just wondering because you were there for quite some time.
Yeah, so I just knew I wanted to be in a field where I could help people. I have always just felt like I wanted to give back to society in some way, and education seemed like a good place. And honestly, like I chose education over nursing because you get summers off and you don't have to
Yeah.
work weekends. And I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
that's a good gig.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I still feel like I'm educating in a different way right now,
Right.
right? Like, so I'm
Right.
working with adults, but I definitely feel like I'm helping them, I'm educating them on their own health, their own wellness. So yeah, I just really like connecting with other people and supporting people to be their best self. And I feel like in education, that's a great way to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like really what it came down to for you was you had this calling of helping people or,
Hmm.
or educating or giving something back to people, right? And obviously it was through education, then through, you wanted to do kind of to an extent nursing. You didn't do that though. And then you're
Hmm.
doing this and it's really that calling. So how critical is it for people to determine or find out their true calling, or
Mm.
some people say their purpose or your why, whatever, however you see it, you can see it in different aspects. Yet how critical is that for somebody to follow?
I mean, I feel like it's huge. It's been huge in my life too. I've taken a lot of time. I mean, I've done a couple different yoga teacher trainings and a lot of self exploration. We had a friend pass away. I'm trying to think now. It was maybe 5 years ago now. And when that happened, it was a week before his 40th birthday. And when that happened, my husband and I sat down and we were like, whoa, this is crazy. I mean, this is the guy that performed our marriage ceremony. He was a really close friend of ours. And we just realized life is short. And
Mm,
I was like, I want to try something different. And I really feel like this is like what I want to be doing. And I wasn't sure how it was going to look. But I think that for a lot of people, we go through life and whatever that purpose might be, we either ignore it because it's too scary to take that leap,
mhm.
or we get to the end of our life and we're like, wow, I really wish that I had done like X, Y, and Z. And so that's actually part of what I do, is helping people kind of find out like what are their maybe life's purpose is a bit
Mm,
big,
yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely figuring out, what are your priorities? What are your core values that you want
Mm,
to live by? What are the things that are important to you? Because I think I really want to, like, I want to get to the end of my life and I want to look back and be like, wow, I made like the best choices possible. I had an amazing life. I had an amazing community, a bunch of people around me, and I gave back to the greater good. And I think that if we can all say that at the end of our life, like how amazing would that be for the whole world, right?
right.
So yeah, so I think that it's huge for people to sit down and take that time and figure out, like, what am I put here for? Like, we're all part of this big giant puzzle of humanity, and
Mm.
how do we fit individually? How does our piece of the puzzle fit with everybody else's, and how do we build that community? I think that's huge.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree otherwise. I mean, I definitely know that for a fact too, and I believe that uh, for us as people, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or working for somebody else, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are finding your highest intention, your life purpose. I feel like,
Hmm.
again, like you mentioned, and I like the way you put it. You were part of this big puzzle, which is kind of cool, because at the end of the day, we're I feel like we're here for for a particular purpose, and we all have a different purpose, and it's our job to find that purpose and go after that, so that when I'm in my last days, I can look back and there's like, nah, I'm good, I'm content, I'm ready to
Hmm.
go. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And it's sad, I think it was Les Brown used this analogy, and he said, "Imagine you're in your bed, dying, and around you are the ghosts of all the dreams and ideas that you could have, bring out to fruition, and they're telling you, because of you, we're dying with you. We couldn't come out into the world, right?" And so I love that, because it's true. Like, a lot of people are sitting in their dying bed saying, "Man, like again, the regret, or the I could have done this, I could have done, whatever." And again, we lose that opportunity, right? So
Hmm.
um so you obviously have a good support system, your husband, right? That help you through taking the leap of faith. Yet I want to know more about that, because I think that there's a lot of times people do want to take the leap of faith, and whether they feel like they have a support system or not, a lot of times is that fear, the unknown, the I don't have control to an extent, or even perhaps the fact that I'm going to be uncomfortable with that situation because I'm
Hmm.
so comfortable getting this paycheck or whatever the case may be. I want to know more about your experience, and what are some things that you can give us, some advices.
Oh, wow. I don't know that that's a big thing to be giving advice about,
Right. Or
Cesar.
you're, yeah, right. Yeah.
um, no, I definitely, I mean, fear is huge. Like that is something that I think in my experience, that's what holds almost all of us back
Mm,
from everything, right? Like I definitely for a long time, like I had to work through a lot of fear because for years. So I'll kind of go back and give you a little more on my background. When I was in 8th grade, my dad lost his job. It was like the early 90s and there was a recession and he got laid off. He'd worked at GE for 25 years and got laid off. And that really, I mean, I was in 8th grade. So that was a pretty formative time of my life. And there was a long time where I felt like I had to have a job that I had a consistent paycheck, that I knew where my money was coming from. I never wanted to be in the position where I was going to get laid off. And so I had this story around that for years of my life, decades really. And I had to work through a lot of fear as I took this leap into entrepreneurship and starting my own business, of not knowing what the future was going to hold, not having any secure paycheck, not knowing what the heck I was doing. I'd never been in business before. I didn't even know like what marketing or any of this stuff was. and um, and it was scary. And I think it was all, I just realized like the biggest place for me, like the place where you grow the most, the
hmm
places where I've grown the most in my life are when I've taken that leap, when I've done the scary things, when I've
mm,
done something that was like big and bold and like, oh shit, what's going to happen here?
right.
Sorry, am I allowed to
No.
cuss on the
Yeah. Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I feel like when yeah, I mean, I think those are the places that make us feel really human, is when we feel the fear and we push through that fear anyway, and we do it in spite of being scared, and we get to the other side and we're like, oh my God, I just did that. Like I just did this and it's like, it's working and it's successful or whatever that looks like. And yeah, I mean, I almost think it's like our obligation as humans to feel scared and to do stuff anyway and to do big and scary things, because when we're fearful, that's when we grow and that's when we learn and that's when we start to get connected with like our highest version of ourselves. If we
hmm
play it safe the whole time, then I mean, how boring is that, right? We're going to
Yeah.
be like doing the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again. And yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like, again, I feel really fortunate. I'm I have a daughter and I have a husband and they're both awesome. And like, I'm not a single mom who's out there like working my butt off, trying to support my kids without any support from anyone else. So, I mean, I definitely recognize that I'm in a different situation than a lot of people out there. So I have I can say these kinds of things, right?
Right.
But I do think that like, even in those situations, if you let things that you're afraid of hold you back from trying something new or doing something or taking that step to fulfill your highest purpose and to reach the goals, then you're not sharing your gifts and you're not sharing everything that you have to share with the world out of fear. And that's kind of a sad place to be,
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
and I can imagine that even with a support system, because there's always gonna be I think these voices in your head telling you, what are you
Hmm.
doing? Like, is this even for you? And I'm sure that even with the support system, you're still having those doubts, or you still having things filtered through your mind. So how do you combat that? How do you fight those things, or those thoughts that perhaps are not uh, what you want them to be?
Yeah, well, I do, I practice yoga. My yoga
Mm,
practice is like a huge part of, I've been teaching yoga for 13 years now. And that's a place where I work through a lot of my demons for sure. Like I'll get on, or my mountain bike. Those tend to be the two
mm,
places where
yeah,
when I'm exercising and moving my body, my brain's going a million miles an hour. And I just kind of start working through things. And a lot of times I just think like, okay, what's the worst thing that happens here?
yeah,
And I'll go down that rabbit hole. I'm like, worst case scenario, we lose our house, we lose all of our income, we do all these things. And then I'm like, okay, well, the likelihood of that really happening is pretty low. Um, I can always go back into public education. There's always jobs in education. So I can always go back into that. So I think playing through some of those worst case scenarios, and also then thinking, okay, So if this is where I want to be, if this is what I'm scared to do, what are the little teeny baby steps that can get me there? And a friend of mine reminded me yesterday, there's a quote that says something like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when we're looking at any of these challenges, we have to just take it one step at a time and one bite at a time, right? And
Yeah.
just kind of figure out like, what's the next step to getting to where I want to be? And what resources do I have? Because there's definitely a difference in having resources and being resourceful. And there's, I think it was Tony Robbins that talks about this, right? That it's like, you don't have to, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have money, or I don't have these resources, or I don't have this and I don't have that. And they don't realize their own resourcefulness and the skills that we already have inside of us. So I do a lot of talk about reminding myself, like I do a lot of those, like, is it Stuart Smalley? Like, I'm good enough and I'm smart enough. And,
Yeah, right.
you know, I do a lot of like self-pep talks.
Yeah.
And I also really just sit down and like look at, I face the fears and I look at what is the worst case scenario. And I let myself go down that rabbit hole. And then I make plans for all of the different things. Like, okay, well, if this is the worst thing that's going to happen, how do I put in some security measures or whatever you want to call it to make sure that that doesn't happen? How do I kind of like look at it from all the different aspects of what can happen and try and prevent all those worst case scenarios from actually happening.
Somebody once mentioned this to me, and obviously it's a bit more complicated than that, yet if you see it from that perspective, it's kind of simple. And he mentions, like, you know, when you look at any challenges that you're facing, the one thing you got to ask yourself is, like you said, what is the worst case scenario? Am I going to come out alive or dead? If I'm going to come out alive, you can recover.
Mm-hmm.
The only one thing that we cannot fix or do anything is death. And again, obviously it's more complicated than that, yet when you see that, though, it's true. Like you said, even if you were to, worst case scenario, lose your house, lose all your income, you're still alive, which means that you still have a purpose, which means that you can still go back and recover that or do that. And so one thing that I was telling people, or I tell people, is that the biggest thing that you have that costs no money whatsoever to anyone is what's inside, you know, your brain. The power that you have is very powerful. You can come up with an idea, you can come up with something, and as long as you continue to work through that mind and you know, continue to embody the mind with the right ingredients, the right programs, you can really do anything. You can recover and do anything that you set your mind to do so, right? And so I guess from that perspective, I don't know if you know, one thing that you said is you have more control over your stress and anxiety than you think, right? And it comes down to what you think in your mind. How critical, and then you said you just have to train your brain muscle to be calm. So can you give us more of that there?
Absolutely. We can nerd out on science for a long time. So I mentioned I'm a science teacher. So
that's right.
So well, I think first of all, people need to recognize that like stress, anxiety, all those things, like they serve a purpose for us. They serve, you know, as we've evolved as humans, eons ago, people were, you know, we needed our fight or flight response to survive. Now we've got our fight or flight response kicking in when we're going into like take our driver's test, or we're going into a job interview, or we're going into all these different places that aren't actually life or death scenarios. They're just a little stressful. And so your brain is like any other muscle in your body. If you are not training it, if you're training it to live in that stress and anxiety, which I think our society does. I mean, we're bombarded with all this information all day long, and it's very natural for us to feel stress and overwhelm. But what we need to be doing is we need to be training the part of our brain. So you've got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And your sympathetic is your fight or flight. Your parasympathetic is what's called your rest and digest, or I like it even better, your tend and befriend. So you get to like tend to yourself and befriend other people. And when we like are constantly in this stress mode, and we have like these low levels of cortisol being, you know, all day long, our adrenal glands are working all day long, we never actually work that calm, that tend and befriend muscle. So there's a lot of things that I teach people in my program about how to use your breath, how to do mindfulness activities. And it doesn't mean like you have to sit down and meditate for half an hour. Like that is not me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be, I'm not a meditation teacher. I
Yeah.
put that out there up front, but I definitely teach people quick and easy tips and tricks to do throughout the day that help to strengthen the muscle. So, I mean, if I go and get off the couch right now and go try and run a marathon, I would probably like, it would not be pretty. I'd be like
Yeah.
crawling over the finish line. And it's the same thing, right? If you go out and you're like, I'm going to go be calm today, even though I've been stressed out for the past 3 years of my life, but I'm going to go today and be super calm and chill. Like that's not going to happen. You have to actually train your brain, but people don't realize that they have control over that. They don't realize, they think they're just like, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm so anxious. And they don't really realize that your brain muscle can be trained to, and you can strengthen those neural pathways and you can strengthen the nerve system in your brain so that instead of being stressed out, you know, for 20 minutes when your boss puts a new project on your lap or whatever, you might be stressed out for 5, and then you can like do some breathing, you can do some stretching, you can do some different things, and you can actually get your body back into a more parasympathetic, a more calm state. So I think I don't think people understand the power of that we have over our brains and what we think. And we just think like, oh, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, like it's always going to be like that. But really, you know, it's like going out and running. We have to actually, if you want to be a good runner, you have to go and do it. If you want to be a good, calm, chill person, you have to actually practice that. It doesn't just happen naturally.
Right. So what are some of the tips that if you can just give us a few of the tips that you tell your clients they can do on a day-to-day basis, you know, that can help
Absolutely. So I love, I'm drinking coffee right now, but I love setting a water alarm throughout the day. It's one of my favorite things. So I'll set an alarm on my phone like twice a day, drink a giant glass of water, and then I will either do a few yoga moves. I might do a couple sun salutations. So your spine is obviously part of your nervous system, your brain, your spine, all your nerves. So I will get up and I'll do like reach my arms overhead. As you do that, you lengthen your side bodies. So you're getting more breath into your lungs. Inhale and exhale through your nose is a key to your nervous system, that you are not in rest and digest, or you're not in fight or flight. It puts you in that more calm state, because think about it, if you're getting ready to go fight off like a mountain lion or a bear or whatever, or you're getting ready to go run away from one, then you need more oxygen. So you start breathing in and out through your mouth versus through your nose. So all these calming breaths through your nose help to calm down your nervous system. So I'll sometimes just stand up, reach my arms overhead, stretch over to the right, stretch over to the left, do a little back bend, do a forward bend, and then twist right and left. So your spine works in all 6 directions. It folds side to side, folds forwards and backwards, and it can twist side to side. So if you work your spine in all 6 directions like that while you're breathing slowly, that can help to calm your body down. And even just taking some breaths, like Dr. Andrew Weil has a really great 4-7-8 breathing exercise that he came up with. So you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold at the top for 7 seconds, and then you exhale for 8. And that is a great calming breath, because when you exhale longer, that cues your body that you don't need a lot of oxygen, that you're not trying to fight off the bear. And so it helps to calm your body down. So those are some of the things that I love doing. I just like doing it throughout the day, and it's a quick, like 5 minutes, right? You set an alarm, drink some water. That's really good for your brain, for your body. And then, do either some light stretching or some of these intentional breathing exercises. Take 5 or 10 breaths like that, and that helps to calm you down throughout the day.
Right. Besides those things, is there anything that you particularly do every day? I know Tony Robbins talks about what are your rituals, what are things that you do kind of like on a daily basis, and are there any specific things that you do every day to put you in a positive state of mind, or even just put you in a good, healthy mindset?
Yeah. So I, every morning when I wake up, I get my journal out or my planner for the day. And I actually have a planner that at the top, it has a place to put your 3 gratitudes.
Mm.
And so I actually will write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And I learned this trick from, I was listening to the Boss Babe podcast recently, and one of the girls was saying that she does daily gratitudes that are actually like, they haven't actually happened yet. Right. So it's like she'll be thinking about what she wants to happen in her life. And she'll say, I am so grateful that, you know, X, Y, and Z happened. And then she feels it in her body as though it has actually already happened. And just kind of puts it out there. So sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'll do things that I'm actually grateful for that have already happened. Yep. But like recently I've been putting out, like, I'm grateful for all the doctors and who are working, and like all the scientists who are working on a vaccine. You know, and then I'll put, I'm grateful for, you know, not totally screwing up on this podcast today. That was mine for this morning. So I try and start off my day with gratitude. Okay. I definitely always start out my day with like drinking my water while I'm waiting for my coffee to be ready, usually. And then I'll sit down and I try and plan out my day. I pick out my big 3 things that I want to do for the day. Okay. So it can either be, I'll write out like my whole to-do list, everything that I need to do. And then I choose my top 3 because I feel like that just boils it down. And especially right now, you know, just being at home, and it's, if I don't have like my day figured out, I won't get anything done. I'll be wandering around, like farting around on Facebook and, and like watching Netflix, and the next thing you know, it's bedtime. So I definitely try and at least come up with 3 things. So that's kind of my morning ritual.
Okay. That's awesome. I do something very similar. I drink 1 bottle of water every morning, and you know, I've done a couple of I listen to a lot of different people, and they're like, you know, that's so critical, so important, it's good for the brain. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll do it. So anyways, I drink water. I also do actually affirmations in the morning, and then I also do journaling more towards the end of the day, and just gratitude and all that stuff. So I think it's always good to build something, some sort of technique every day. And whatever that might work for you, right? It's just like creating something, because it's good to put you in that positive state of mind. And I'm like, kind of like old fashioned. I have like a little notebook, and I write down things that I want to get done. And then I put a little square next to it, so that when I'm done with it, I can come back and check it off, you know, which is kind of cool. So it feels like that sense of accomplishment, right? Like you actually did something. And so anyways, that's something cool.
Sometimes I put stuff on my to-do list that I know I'm going to do, like cook dinner, you know, something that's like go to the bathroom, cook dinner, like things that I have to do just so I can check it off, because it feels good to have like that check next to it, right?
It does.
Like you got something done.
And it's like, all right, I can go on to the next thing now, you know, like I'm getting stuff done, which is pretty cool, you know?
Yep.
So let's talk about you. So you have a 12-week wellness program, right?
Yep.
And is it primarily helping women or also men, or is it women who are struggling with stress and anxiety, or
I mean, it could be. I mean, I don't want to leave out the guys, definitely, but I tend to, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just tend to, I seem to attract women mostly as my clients. I do have one guy right now going through the program with about, I think like 7 or 8 other ladies. So he's like the one guy in there, but he's hanging in with all of us. But yeah, so I tend to work with a lot of women who are, as I said, a lot of moms who are trying to juggle everything, women who struggle with anxiety, or just need some more ways to build in self-care into their day. And so I really, my goal is to help people figure out how to find time to take care of themselves, how to find time to prioritize themselves. So with my work in the schools, I did a lot of helping kiddos figure out how to balance, you know, school and a part-time job and sports and homework and family obligations. And so I do a lot with the people in my program to help them figure out a lot of stuff, like figuring out time. How do you actually build this time into your day? Because we all only have 24 hours in the day. So how do we use that in the best way possible? We also do a lot of work on just reconnecting back with ourselves. So figuring out, what are my priorities? What are my core values? Who are my support people? Who am I, like, what kind of doing some of that work on, like, what is my purpose? What was I put here for? And how do I prioritize working some of that into my day as well? And then we also do a lot of just teaching. I do a lot of teaching people techniques. So a lot of teaching people breathing techniques, mindfulness techniques. We've got yoga and fitness, because I really believe in moving the body. It's so good. So every week we have one day a week we do a group fitness. So one week it's yoga, and the next week it's more of like a high intensity interval training or like weights kind of stuff. So we alternate between yoga and more of a fitness style class every other week, so people can join that group. They have a call with me every week just to ask questions, get things clarified. So so it's really just helping people learn how to use mindfulness and physical activity and some of this like self-reflection, journaling. So the inner map stands for mindful, active, present. So I try and build in that the mindfulness piece, the physical activity, and then the present, I call that like the journaling and kind of self-reflection and some of what I call life work. I don't like the word homework. I feel like that has, people are like, I don't want to do homework. But so we do a lot of that in there, but those are kind of the focus of the program.
You triggered two questions that I want to get your opinion and
Sure.
see, what do you think about it? You were talking about time and all these things that you got to do and fit into your time. And so do you feel like it's more about priority management or time management, in terms of that? Because you're right, we all have 24 hours on a day, right? And so I just want to get your opinion, because I know a lot of times, like even when I was in corporate America working for somebody else, it was really more, for me, it was more like priority management. We have to manage a priority. I have a different opinion now, that's my opinion, yet I want to hear from you, since you kind of talk about that with your clients.
Mm-hmm. I think for a lot of people, it's both. You can't, if you don't know what your priorities are, it's really hard to build your day around those. So I think you have to first, that's why I always figure out what are my top 3 things, because I can go check my email for 3 hours a day, and I'm not actually moving the needle. I'm not actually accomplishing anything other than responding to everybody else's fires that they, their priorities. So I need to figure out what are my 3 things for the day. And then I build time into my day to do that. So I'll look at, today I was like, okay, I got to get on the podcast with Cesar. So I put that on my schedule, but then I'll block out time. Like, okay, I'm going to work on this particular project for this hour of the day. And then for this hour, I'm going to work on like helping my kid with stuff. And so I kind of build in those priorities throughout the day, because otherwise, I mean, you could be busy all day long, and it doesn't mean that you're actually accomplishing anything, the needle in any direction. So I think it's kind of both. You have to know what your priorities are, and then build the structure of your time around those, and also build in time for taking care of yourself. If you are a priority, which you should be, in my opinion, like our health and wellness should be a priority to us, then we have to build that in. We have to put that in, find the time for it. And if that means that it's 10 minutes on your lunch break where you're doing jumping jacks in your office, or, you set a timer and you've got a 5-minute break and you go take a walk around your office building and drink some water and do some breathing, then that's what that means. But it's learning how to build those in. And if it's a priority, then you're going to do it. Right. Yeah. Like if it's really important to you, you're going to find a way to do it. And if it's not a priority, then it's not going to happen necessarily. So. Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other one that I'm curious to know is present, right? Kind of being on the present, kind of like the P of map. I feel like sometimes people get lost in the past, right? Some people, so thinking of the past is kind of like, to an extent, you're creating anxiety. To an extent, thinking of the future, you're just really stressing yourself out. So it comes down to like the present. How do you see that, and what is your opinion in terms of that? Like, because I think a lot of people do live in the past, and therefore they cannot get to the now moment, or even worse, go to the future. And some people get hung up on the future because they're stressing about tomorrow, like if whatever, right? And so like you don't want to do that. How is that critical for you?
I think a lot of it is kind of learning how to accept whatever situation you're in. So you can't change the past. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so really figuring out, okay, where are you right now? What do you have control over in this moment? Because we always have control over something. Okay, we may not have control over like our family. We don't know. We didn't choose to be born into this family.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole other can of worms. Maybe some
Yeah.
people believe that they did, but right.
Right.
But you know, from a practical standpoint, like you can't choose your family. You can't choose how they react. You can't choose how other people treat you. You can only choose how you react to that and the choices that you make. And you can't go back and fix the future or the past. So you have to figure out, like, if there's things that need to be resolved in the past, then figure out a way to resolve those and move on. And I think a lot of that is, you know, either forgiveness or self-love or some of those other things. And then as far as like the future, I mean, I would say that that's a lot of where anxiety comes from, is people are worrying about the future. And so I think really it's just empowering people to recognize what you have control over in this present moment. You have control over your thoughts. You have control over your breath. You have control over your body. You know, you have control over the actions that you take to put in some safeguards so that your worst case scenario doesn't happen. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have some terrible thing happen in the future. I mean, just because I write down 3 daily gratitudes and have my to-do list doesn't mean that, like, you know, I won't go out and get hit by a car later this afternoon. Probably won't happen because I'm not going to be running out in the street. but but you know what I mean? I mean, it's not going to prevent these tragedies from happening. Stuff happens. But I think when you start to recognize that we do have control over so much around us, and again, control over our anxiety, control over our, you know, our breathing patterns, I think can either bring us down a couple notches with anxiety and depression and those things, or it can heighten it if we're constantly in this like frazzled state. So for me, that's what it means to be present. It's really recognizing, like, as much as possible, accepting the situation that I'm in, the good, the bad, the ugly of every situation that I'm in, and figuring out, well, if I don't want to be in this situation, what do I have control over to get me to the next place? And taking control over the things that I can control, because, you know, there's only, you can't control other people. So
you can only control yourself, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah, definitely. All right, awesome. I have just a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Number one, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they connect with you or find you?
So I have a website. It's Inner Map Project, www.innermapproject.com. You can also email me at innermapproject@gmail.com. So again, innermapproject@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram. Inner Map Project is on Instagram. I have an Inner Map Facebook page, but I tend to check my personal page more regularly. So you can find me on Facebook too. Like, give me a little shout out on Facebook. It's Jamie Johnson Blackburn is what it is. I think what my full name is on Facebook. I have my maiden name in there for all my buddies from the past. But yeah, so I'm all over the place. I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we'll have all the information for the people that are listening to us and watching us.
Awesome.
So they can definitely connect with you. And then the last thing that I have for you, and you've given us already a lot of great tips, and I just want to maybe get one more from you.
Sure.
And, you know, if you can tell people anything that they can do now to overcome anything in their life, what would that be? What advice would you give them?
Oh, wow. You're leaving me with a zinger, man. Thought I was going to get off easy at the end.
Right?
Wow. I think probably like the biggest advice would just be to take action, right? I mean, not get stuck in just thinking about it, but actually like take one baby step at a time. So whatever that might be, you know, if it's just writing stuff down on paper. If you have this big goal that you want to achieve and it seems really scary, write it down, look at it every day, and then figure out one little step that you can take or one connection that you can make to start to move the needle a little bit towards that goal. Because I think we all, you know, it's baby steps, and just take, as they say in Frozen 2, which we just watched with my 7-year-old, like just do the next right thing. So to take the next step in the direction that you want to go, and just take action.
I really love that, because actually sometimes we tend to forget that, for us to do something, we feel like we got to do all of it at once. And it really comes down to just one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start recognizing that we don't need to have all of the answers, we don't need to do everything to get this thing or accomplish whatever we're trying to accomplish. It's really just that one step. It's so powerful. And then the number two is, a lot of people get hung up on that action, on the taking the action. They know that I want to lose 20 pounds. You didn't do anything about it. They continue to eat. They know what they want. They just don't take that action, right? So I really love that. That's actually pretty awesome. It's a good way to actually end this too. I really enjoyed that. So, Jay, thank you so much for being here. Really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Cesar, for having me. It was so nice to chat with you this morning. It was a great way to start the day. So definitely appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure you like, you comment, and you subscribe to this podcast. You can check us on YouTube, and stay tuned for the next interviews. See you next time. Have a good one. Bye. Hi. We know the importance of moving your freight from one place to another and moving it on time. We are Leon's Freight Services, and our top priority is to bring you multiple logistics solutions. We specialize on port drayage in Los Angeles, LTL and FTL transportation, airport pickups and deliveries, and full services in contract logistics, warehouse, and transload. We at Leon's Freight Services are a one-stop shop, giving our customers and business partners more logistics solutions. Contact us at www.leonsfreight.com or at 310-763-0013, and one of our business development associates will reach out to you and help you with your logistics needs. Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode, and know that you truly can overcome anything.